Discover the incredible moment when a billionaire transforms a single mom's life after hearing her heartfelt dream. Sarah wiped down the counter at the Maplewood Diner, her weary eyes momentarily catching a glimpse of autumn leaves swirling outside the window. The vibrant colors were supposed to inspire joy, yet today they only deepened the grayness inside her. Not a day passed without the stark reminder of her husband's absence, leaving her to juggle the demands of single motherhood. As she tried to focus on the task at hand, her two children, Mia and Jake, sat in a booth nearby, oblivious to the storm brewing in their mother's heart. They laughed and chatted, their innocent voices piercing through her veil of exhaustion. That afternoon, as she strategically planned her limited resources for the week ahead, an alchemy of bills and groceries, Sarah's persistent dream flickered to life again. A small tutoring center, a refuge where children like Mia and Jake could thrive academically and cultivate their potential. But each time her dreams whispered to her, reality would crush them back down under a mountain of doubt. The idea felt so unattainable, especially when her nightly shift barely covered rent. Could she really ask for help from someone whose life was a universe away from hers? As her thoughts spiraled, the diner door swung open. A tall stranger walked in, his casual demeanor belied by a sharp suit. Jack. She wasn't sure how someone like him had wandered into this modest diner, but the way his crinkled blue eyes seemed to take in everything around him ignited a flicker of interest. As she served him his meal, she couldn't help but overhear him engage with the kids at the booth next to her. Laughter erupted, a sound that filled the diner like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then she heard it, her voice, soft yet impassioned, sharing her dream with Mia and Jake about opening that tutoring center. It was an intimate moment, pure and revealing, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. Jack's gaze shifted to her, a spark igniting an unanticipated connection between them. "You have a beautiful dream," he said once their eyes locked, his words sincere. The unexpected compliment sent a shiver down her spine, stirring something deep within her, yet doubt crashed in hard. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The heaviness fell back on her chest like a weight. How could she accept help from a billionaire when she felt like she was grasping at straws?
Slowly, she began to open herself to conversations with him over coffee, where companionship blossomed against the backdrop of her struggles. Yet a whisper of scandal began creeping through Maplewood, targeting her vulnerability. The tight-knit community, known for its watchful gaze, started to question her life choices. Was it her association with Jack, or the fierce independence she displayed that raised eyebrows? An unsettling furor ignited over her reputation, and while Jack stood resolutely by her side, it felt like a tightening noose strangling the remnants of her dignity. As the tension mounted, Sarah wrestled with conflicting emotions, her dreams burning brighter, yet each flicker threatening to be extinguished by the very town that had once embraced her. With each passing moment, the stakes grew sharper. Could she fight for her vision against the odds, or would she fold under pressure to silence whispers that gnawed at her very identity? As she prepared to face the unraveling storm, the weight of Maplewood's expectations lingered heavily. With her heart pounding and her mind racing, Sarah knew she stood at a dangerous intersection, the chance to reclaim her worth or the overwhelming fear of being shunned. The door to the diner swung closed behind her, and with it, the choices ahead blurred into an uncertain dance that promised either redemption or ruin. Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, pausing to scrutinize her reflection. The once vibrant light in her eyes seemed dulled by the past weeks of turmoil, overshadowed by the whispers that permeated her world. She had long since grown accustomed to seeing herself through the prism of others' judgments, a lens clouded by desperation and lingering defeat. But today, uncertainty had morphed into resolve, stirring something within her, a fierce determination to not only exist, but to claim the life she envisioned. As she brushed her hair, she did something she hadn't done in ages. She recalled her dream with clarity. That tutoring center wasn't just a fantasy, it was a lifeline for her children and others in Maplewood. They deserved the chance to learn and succeed, away from the shadows of doubt binding her.
The thought of nurturing young minds filled her with a sense of purpose. The resilience she had cultivated as a single mother gnawed at the edges of despair, and the prospect of actualizing her dreams set her heart racing. She knew she had to confront the fears that clung to her, the very fears encapsulated in the town's judgmental glances and insidious whispers. What if she could channel that judgment into motivation? A fire ignited within her, fueled by the realization that she had to take action. But what would that look like? Her first instinct was to reach out to Jack again. Their conversations over coffee had transformed from mere pleasantries into something profound, an exchange of thoughts that expanded her horizon beyond the four walls of the diner.
Jack had offered her support, but she felt it was time to vocalize her intentions and ask for more than just companionship. "Jack," she murmured under her breath, testing the name on her lips. The way he looked at her, the sincerity mirrored in his blue eyes, encouraged her to seek guidance, not just financial aid. Her heart skipped a beat as she planned the conversation in her mind. She imagined sharing her vision of the tutoring center, articulating not only what it could mean for her children, but for the community that nurtured them. Determined to make it happen, she began drafting a proposal, highlighting her mission and outlining the resources she would need. Every word was infused with passion. For each funding request she listed, she felt a sense of empowerment, a precious commodity she had almost forgotten existed. This was about education, hope, and the right to dream. Yet, even as she typed, a gnawing anxiety embraced her resolve. There was still the looming shadow of judgment plaguing her. Could she trust that Jack would understand her vision without viewing it through the lens of scandal? The very community that had once fostered her was now crafting narratives that made her second-guess her judgment. Despite the negative energy, she knew she had to rise above, to either prove her detractors wrong or pivot from their expectations entirely. Breath hitching painfully, she stood up and shook off the hesitation, her eyes scanning the room filled with her children's drawings, frosty snowmen, bright rainbows, and fantastical creatures. They were seeds of hope, reminding her of what she was fighting for. Taking a deep breath, she decided it was time to face Jack with her aspirations, no longer a woman shadowed by doubt, but a mother fighting for her children's future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, its warm hues spilling through the window, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. She wasn't just going to speak about her dreams, she was going to claim them. With steely determination, she reached for her phone, poised to dial Jack's number. But as she hesitated, a message notification popped up on her screen, making her heart drop. The sender was unknown. She opened it, and the words sent shockwaves through her, raising an entirely new set of questions that could unravel everything she had just built. In that moment, Sarah understood that this journey would demand more than courage. It required an unyielding heart, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. With resolve tightening around her, she pressed the button to call Jack. But what she'd just discovered cast shadows over her nascent determination, leaving her uncertain of what to expect next. Sarah stared at the message, her breath catching in her throat. The screen illuminated her face with cold light, and her heart raced as she processed the words. The text hinted at secrets she had hoped to keep buried, but now felt exposed, raw, and vulnerable. The sender claimed to have information, things about Jack, things that could disrupt the fragile foundations of her plans and self-image. As the weight of uncertainty pressed down upon her, a rush of emotions threatened to overwhelm her resolve. She put the phone down, trembling slightly. Could this be a hoax? A cruel prank? The possibilities spiraled in her mind, and she berated herself. Why had she allowed her hope to grow? Why did she imagine that she could transition from the shadows of doubt into a space of confidence and possibility? Shaking off the torrent of thoughts, Sarah realized she was at a crossroads. Either she could let this unknown seep into her spirit, drowning her aspirations, or she could confront it head-on. Her fingers ached to reach for the phone again, to investigate the truth behind the message. But she had already stood up, had already vowed to fight. Turning that determination toward the unknown seemed the only logical move forward. With the shadows of doubt lurking in her mind, she made the decision. She would bring the message up with Jack. He had proven himself trustworthy, a source of support as she muscled past her barriers. The conversation could potentially clarify everything, dispelling the anxiety wrapping around her like a vine. She wouldn't let this be her undoing if she could help it.
Clutching her phone, the proposal lingering on her desk like an unfinished promise, she practiced what she would say. Gathering courage, she dialed Jack's number, urging herself to remain calm. It rang twice before his reassuring voice echoed through the line, tinged with familiarity that instantly soothed her nerves. "Hey, Sarah, everything okay?" His enthusiasm warmed her heart. "Hi, Jack," she replied, trying to match the ease in his voice. "I wanted to talk about something important." She felt the air shift around her as she broached the topic, describing her vision for the tutoring program. She poured her hopes and her fears into their conversation, articulating her desire to create an environment where children could thrive despite their backgrounds. And as she spoke, she felt the weight lift incrementally. This was her moment, her act of defiance against doubt. Yet she hesitated, feeling that strange message crawling back into her thoughts. "Jack, there's something else," she said finally, a sense of urgency creeping into her tone. "I received a message today. It concerns you and me. It's important." His silence on the other end was deafening. Her heart raced as she mentally cringed at what she was revealing. Sarah had not anticipated that speaking up could unravel her fears and leave her exposed. She held her breath, bracing herself for his reaction. What if he didn't trust her? What if he turned away? "Tell me everything," Jack finally said, his voice firm and serious. With that imploring invitation, Sarah felt a fragile thread of hope weaving through the doubt.
The aftermath of her words felt daunting, but for the first time, she chose authenticity over fear. The courageous resolve she had crafted was no longer a princely facade. It anchored her against the tide of despair. As she shared the details of the message ringing in her ears, she could feel the stakes growing higher. Secrets could align or fracture the threads of their connection, and her heart raced at the confrontation between fear and hope. The reflection of what lay ahead was intimidating, yet thrilling. Her voice quivered as she articulated the core of her anxieties about judgment, not just from her community, but also from him. "Jack, it's just that..." But the weight of her confessions hung in the air just before she could finish. What would his response reveal? Would it tear down what she had begun to build with him? Sarah knew she was reaching a pivotal moment that could define not only her dreams, but her emerging identity. As she held her breath on the line, the revelation between them hung suspended, poised to change everything. In the depths of her heart, she questioned, had she found the courage to face the potential consequences of her truth? Now stood the true test of her journey. Would hope surge beneath the weight of secrets, or would it buckle under pressure? As the tension built, a new realization dawned on her. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. A silence enveloped the conversation, stretching like an elastic band ready to snap. Sarah's pulse quickened, the anticipation thick with uncertainty. She knew the stakes were high. They always were when the truth intermingled with trust. How would Jack react? Would he see her as a partner, or would the confession air the hidden cracks in their growing bond? "Sarah, I'm here." Jack's voice pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. What did the message say? She inhaled deeply, tasting the bitterness of fear and the sweetness of newfound resolve. "It hinted at things from your past, about us," she responded, carefully choosing her words, acutely aware of the vulnerability held within them. The weight of her admission was heavier now, but she couldn't backtrack. Jack paused, his breath audible on the line. "What things? You have to promise me you'll be honest. No more secrets." Each word brought a new flood of anxiety, her heart racing as they hung between them like a bridge over uncertain waters. "I promise," he replied, though his tone was laced with something she couldn't quite decipher, an edge, perhaps, or tension. Taking a leap, she plunged deeper. "Someone reached out to me claiming they have dirt on you, something that could impact the tutoring program, possibly even your reputation." As the statement spilled from her lips, Sarah could feel her initial resolve wavering. She was no longer sure if she had breached a barrier or fortified a connection. The silence that followed felt interminable, stretching her nerves taut until they threatened to snap. Finally, Jack spoke again, his voice steady, but lacking its earlier warmth. "What do they want?" She closed her eyes for a moment, envisioning the sender's screen name, an embodiment of the specter haunting her. "I don't know yet. They didn't share specific details, beyond claims that I should be cautious about you."
I understand. His voice had transformed, the confidence shifting into something guarded. Listen, Sarah, my past, it's complicated. Her stomach nodded. Complicated how? With a defeated sigh, he responded, It's not something I wanted to share yet, especially not in this way. It can't be easy for you to feel this uncertainty.
Sarah realized that this was more than just a conversation. This marked the opening of a new chapter in her life, one where every choice echoed with potential. As the reality settled in, she braced herself for the challenges that awaited. And above all, she steeled for the pivotal moment approaching, where she would unveil her next move, both within herself and alongside Jack. Would this reshape the trajectory of their lives, or would the scars of the past hold them back? In the days that followed the revelation, Sarah found herself in a state of transformation. Each morning, the weight of Jack's secrets lingered like a ghost, haunting her relentlessly. Yet within that haunting, she began to see new possibilities, a thriving potential that beckoned her like a distant horizon. Walking to work, her mind buzzed with thoughts of their recent conversation. Jack had stripped away his armor, revealing fragile layers she hadn't expected. It both intrigued and frightened her. The stark honesty had ignited something within her, a burgeoning confidence that could no longer be ignored. Reflecting on her own past and insecurities, she acknowledged how much she feared becoming embroiled in another's chaos, but that fear was rapidly giving way to a sense of agency. As the days progressed, she sought to articulate her own truths, wrestling with the emotional turmoil that surfaced. Sarah realized that her past wasn't merely a thing to be shunned. It could serve as a catalyst for growth. The lessons learned from her struggles in parenthood, the self-doubt that once tethered her, began morphing into stepping stones toward greater self-awareness. Back at the tutoring center, the environment buzzed with activity, a cacophony of laughter and learning that reminded her of her commitment to these students. Ironically, her role had never solely revolved around teaching. It was a shared journey of discovery. As she guided the young minds through their challenges, she couldn't help but notice her own strength expanding in the process. One afternoon, a particularly shy student named Leo hesitated to answer a math problem on the whiteboard. The other kids giggled, and Sarah sensed an opportunity to foster resilience, not just in Leo, but within herself. "Let's tackle this together," she encouraged, inviting him to stand with her. The moment he turned to look at her, uncertain yet hopeful, a surge of determination surged through Sarah. "Mistakes are just part of learning," she said, addressing the entire class. "They are stepping stones to success." Leo eventually worked through the problem. His smile widened as he proudly wrote the answer on the board. The applause from the rest of the class rang like music, filling the room with an air of triumph. And in that collective joy, Sarah recognized her voice, an undeniable power, capable of inspiring others while simultaneously healing her own wounds. While reflections on Jack still invaded her thoughts, she began redirecting energy back toward herself, drafting new plans for career growth and personal achievements. There was a looming event at the center. They needed sponsorship to help expand their program. Perhaps this was her chance to finally assert her vision for what it could become, alongside navigating her relationship with Jack. That evening, while reviewing the proposal she had drafted, Sarah's phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Jack. "Can we talk? I think it's time to address everything." Her heart raced. "Address everything," echoed ominously in her head.
In those words, she detected the urgency of a collision course their relationship seemed poised to take. No longer just about sharing pasts or uncertainties, this felt like an overture to something far more momentous. As she gathered her thoughts, Sarah found herself at a critical juncture. Would she confront the complexities of their alliance head-on, or would she shield herself, fearing the darkness that wrapped around Jack's past? The pen paused over her notes. Her choice would inevitably redirect the path before her, for better or worse. Taking a deep breath, she sent a reply. Yes, we can meet. Let's discuss our future. As she hit send, a swell of hope and apprehension enveloped her. The fragile bridge they had erected was about to be tested, but perhaps this was the necessary upheaval they both needed for a brighter future. Unbeknownst to her, the layers of Jack's life intertwined with hers were ready to unravel. How would their meeting reshape not only their two lives, but also the dreams that lingered beyond the immediate? The stakes were raising higher, a realization that left Sarah teetering on the brink of something extraordinary. The day of the meeting hung heavily in the air, a mix of anticipation and dread curling in the pit of Sarah's stomach. As she sat in the small cafe, the minute hand of the clock seemed to crawl, each tick amplifying her unease. She fiddled with the proposal on the table, her thoughts lingering between excitement and fear. Would Jack's revelations lead to connection, or would they shatter the delicate equilibrium she had just begun to forge? When Jack arrived, he looked unsettled yet determined. His eyes held the weight of unspoken burdens, and Sarah felt her heart flip. This was the moment to confront their shared fears. "Thank you for coming," he started, his voice steady but sprinkled with vulnerability. The sincerity in his tone made her resolve firm, yet her mind raced through 100 outcomes. "Let's just be honest with each other then," Sarah said, surprising even herself with the assertiveness in her voice. This was a radical departure from her previous hesitation. There was no room for pretense now. Jack nodded, inhaling deeply as if steeling himself for the plunge. "I haven't been the person I want to be. My past is filled with mistakes that haunt me, and I need to face them. I don't want to drag you into that, but I care about you, and I want you to know." Each word hung in the air, a tangible tension that bristled between them. Sarah processed his honesty. It called forth her own buried shadows, the scars of past relationships that felt uncomfortable and raw. "I get it, Jack, but I can't pretend that your past doesn't affect us," she confessed, shaking slightly from the weight of her own truth. This was her moment to assert her boundaries. He leaned forward, earnest. "I don't want to keep anything from you any longer. I've fought my own battles, but they've never led to the happiness I seek. I think I finally realized it's time for a change, for both of us, if you'll let me." The layers of vulnerability peeled back, revealing the man beneath the confusion. Sarah felt an invitation to explore that connection, which stirred a new sense of possibility. She envisioned a future not shackled by Jack's revelations, but potentially liberated by them. "What does that mean for us?" she asked, needing clarity amidst the swirling emotions. "It means that I want to be better. I want to take responsibility for my past and embrace what I can be with you," Jack replied, his eyes fixed on hers with an earnestness that made her pulse quicken. Sarah absorbed his words with a mixture of hope and apprehension. She was well versed in the complexities of life, her experiences having taught her that transformation is often messier than expected. "I'm willing to navigate through this, but it requires transparency and trust. I can't promise that I'll have all the answers right away." "There's no rush," he said, a hint of relief softening his features. "I want this to be a partnership, built on honesty and growth, not secrets." As she absorbed that idea, Sarah couldn't help but recall Leo, the shy student who had found his voice as she coaxed him toward resilience. She was embarking on a similar journey with Jack, turning the tides of their intertwined lives into something stronger. A newfound certainty began to illuminate her thoughts. The potential to redefine their relationship, to carve a pathway enriched by vulnerability and healing, felt within reach. Yet she questioned, could they truly navigate the chaos together, or would their respective burdens prove too heavy to bear? As they continued their conversation, Sarah felt the flicker of hope kindling, a soft light against the obscured past. Yet lurking beneath that hope was a nagging doubt. Would their shared path be illuminated by enlightening growth, or would the shadows from Jack's past rear their heads once more? In that moment, she knew the coming weeks would demand everything from her, a chance to strengthen her resilience, both as an individual and within a partnership fraught with complexities. The stakes were immeasurable, and they were just beginning to unravel the layers of their narrative together. What awaited them on this unfamiliar road would test both their limits and their resolve, forcing them to confront challenges that neither had fully anticipated. The potential for greater conflict loomed, and in grappling with that reality, Sarah sensed her transformation had only just begun. Would they both rise beyond the burdens of their failures, or would the weight of their histories pull them under, away from the light they sought? As the days unfolded after their meeting, Sarah felt the weight of her resolve settle into her bones. Each morning she faced the mirror with renewed determination, a reflection of a woman willing to engage fully with the complexities of life and love. Jack's honesty had ignited a fire within her, a stark contrast to the trepidation that had colored her decisions. Yet with this rising flame came the persistent flicker of doubt, whispering questions that stirred her peace. She had promised herself that navigating this relationship would not mean losing her own identity in the process. Instead, it had become an opportunity for self-discovery, drawing her closer to her values and ambitions. Classes resumed at the community center, another chance to channel her energy into fostering growth in others, a role that fed her spirit. The children, eager and bright-eyed, became her grounding force. Their laughter reminded her of resilience. Their small achievements mirrored back her own struggles. With Leo, the shy student whose transformation still warmed her heart, she found herself cultivating an unshakable bond. As she mentored him, she experienced moments that solidified her resolve, not merely as an educator, but as someone dedicated to nurturing potential wherever it lived. Each small success he achieved resonated with her own journey. The realization that she could wield influence, both in Leo's life and in her own, sent ripples of empowerment through her. The connection with Jack began to deepen amid this newfound self-assurance. Their conversations turned to dreams and ambitions. She discovered layers to him that felt hauntingly familiar, yet uniquely different, as they exchanged stories of past failures and future hopes. They embarked on night walks that meandered through the trees, where the shadows danced in tandem with their fears, yet the moonlight offered ambers of hope. Each moment was intertwined with layers of honesty and vulnerability, but the shadows of Jack's past threatened to shift their trajectory unexpectedly. One evening, Jack hesitated as he shared another facet of his history, unveiling the pressure he had lived under, expectations laden by family and society. His vulnerability stirred something deep within Sarah. She recognized in his struggle the echo of her own fears about her worth and potential. "You're not defined by what you've done," she declared, surprising herself with the firmness of her voice. "Neither am I. We have the power to define who we want to be."
Jack looked at her, impressed by the strength in her words. But beneath his gaze lingered something unspoken, a hesitation that created a chasm between them. Sarah felt the curiosity emerging, a need to address the unfiltered revelations that loomed just beyond their reach. Could they truly embrace the opportunity for mutual growth, or would their respective pasts dismantle their present aspirations? As winter approached, so too came a sense of urgency, a closeness crystallizing in the air, balancing between elation and anxiety. Every encounter wrapped them tighter into a delicate weave of intimacy, yet the threads remained frayed with uncertainty. Jack's past resurfaced occasionally in pangs of self-doubt, moments when the burden threatened to drive a wedge between them. Sarah felt it too, the silent allure of drifting away, retreating to safety, but she pushed against the current. It was during one of their pivotal conversations when she sensed the turning tide. "What if we face those shadows together?" she proposed, voice quivering but resolute. "What if we can transform those past pains into building blocks for who we want to become?" Jack stared at her, those familiar emotions rising like storm clouds. Silence hung between them, thick with potential. Would they embark on this journey of mutual discovery, or would the specters of their histories cast long shadows over their budding future? As she awaited his response, Sarah's anticipation mingled with unease. Clarity unfolded like a delicate flower beneath the light of possibility. If they could confront their pasts in unison, perhaps the dual journey of healing would redefine them both. Yet, as the moment stretched, so too did the tension, an uncharted territory taunting her sense of security. And as the answer lingered in the space between them, Sarah couldn't shake the lingering question. If transformation was on the horizon, how many sacrifices would it demand from them, and would the light ultimately dispel the shadows they both feared? The moment stretched agonizingly, the air thick with unspoken truths. Sarah glanced at Jack, his brow furrowed, grappling with something internal that she could not yet name. Her heart pounded, concern threading through her resolve. "Jack," she began, but the words faltered under the weight of possibility. The silence seemed alive, charged with potential and drenched in fear.
Jack finally broke the stillness, his voice low and almost tentative. I want to, but... He hesitated. His eyes darted as if searching for an anchor amidst the swirling chaos of his thoughts. But what if facing those shadows only reveals how unworthy we are? I can't burden you with all of my past. Sarah felt a familiar ache within her, the same nagging fear that had haunted her for years. What if she wasn't enough? But this was different. Standing before Jack, she grasped the truth she had been cultivating within herself.
You're not a burden, she asserted, her tone steady, even as her insides roiled. Your history is part of you, just as my mistakes shape me. We are not defined by those moments. We are defined by how we choose to grow from them. Jack's gaze softened, yet she could still sense the shadows lurking behind his thoughts. The unelaborated stories of pain and regret whispered between them, a chorus of shared wounds that begged for acknowledgement. This was her moment to lead, not just in words, but with actions that carved a path toward healing. The next day, at her classes, the children's infectious energy invigorated her spirit. Leo approached her, his enthusiasm palpable. "Miss Sarah, I read the whole book you gave me," he exclaimed, his cheeks flushed with pride. For an instant, Sarah's heart soared. Here it was again, a moment of empowerment and growth, echoing the revelations of her own journey. "What did you think?" she asked, kneeling to match his height, allowing curiosity to dance in her eyes. "It was so cool. The main character had to face her fears too. I understood her," Leo responded, a hint of excitement bubbling in his voice. Sarah smiled, realizing that she had been mentoring him in more ways than she had anticipated. His journey mirrored her own, a constant dance of overcoming fears and past failures. "You know, sometimes we have to confront those fears to become who we're meant to be," she said gently, the words carrying layers of her own experience. As the days progressed, Sarah found that her lessons extended beyond just teaching. She was learning too. Each interaction with her students illuminated different aspects of herself. They brought clarity to unexamined parts of her identity. She could see how they navigated their personal challenges. They were small warriors in their own right, battling insecurities and rising through small victories. This realization unfurled new layers to her connection with Jack. No longer was she merely an emotional support. She was a conduit for growth, both for herself and for him. By embracing their truths, perhaps they could tool their scars into something transformative, instead of allowing them to fester. Yet the shadows never fully receded. The specter of Jack's hesitance loomed, a persisting reminder that their joint journey would not only demand courage, but also honesty. In another late-night conversation, they sat under the stars, the chill of winter creeping in. "I think I need to be more transparent about my past," Jack admitted, his tone earnest. "Can we truly face it together?" she asked, a mix of fear and hope swirling within her. Would they be prepared for the revelations that might reshape their connection? Jack's response was heavier than expected, a tender weight that spoke of shared vulnerability, and she felt the gravity of their impending decisions. He whispered an echo of doubt. "What if it's too much?" In that moment, Sarah realized that transformation required not only self-acceptance, but also the bravery to confront the very things that frightened them. Their journey was laid bare before them, a road marked with challenges that could either break or strengthen their bond. As they sat beneath the night sky, Sarah felt a stirring deep within her, propelled by the urgency to not just face the shadows, but to invite them into the light. "Then let's step forward, together," she breathed, infusing a sense of determination into her voice, silently questioning whether they both had the strength to redefine not just their pasts, but their futures as well. And as the stars twinkled above, illuminating the space where hope and doubt collided, she knew the real test was yet to come, a confrontation that threatened to expose their insecurities and perhaps guide them toward an unimaginable revelation. Would they emerge indomitable, or would their fears pull them back into the abyss? The following morning, Sarah woke to a chill that seemed to echo the unease settling in her chest. The night had birthed thoughts that danced restlessly in her mind. Would inviting Jack to open up about his past really bring them closer, or would it unravel the delicate threads of their bond? In her classroom, the cacophony of youthful laughter filled the air,
temporarily smothering her worries. Yet, as she engaged with the children, she couldn't help but feel the undercurrent of anxiety. Each spirited hand raised, each eager voice calling out, tugged at her heartstrings, reminding her that these children were just beginning to confront their own fears. They bore their struggles openly, their vulnerabilities like badges of honor. "Miss Sarah, can you tell us what your biggest fear is?" Lucy, a bright-eyed girl with a curiosity that echoed Sarah's own childhood, posed the question. The room fell silent, all eyes trained on her, waiting. Sarah's mind raced, yet in that moment, she was acutely aware of her responsibility, not just to teach, but to embody the lessons of resilience and growth. Taking a deep breath, she decided to share, albeit vaguely. "I think one of my biggest fears is being judged for my past," she confessed, her voice steady. "But each day, I'm learning that those fears don't have to define me. It's the steps we take moving forward that matter most." Leo, ever eager, chimed in. "But how do you take those steps? It feels scary." His candidness struck a chord deep within Sarah. Here it was again, courage intertwined with fear, a lesson at the forefront of her professional journey and her personal life. By facing them head-on, Leo, the first step is to embrace them. When I was younger, I was afraid of failing and being alone, but every time I faced a fear, I grew stronger. As she spoke, she saw how the children leaned in, their eyes bright with recognition. They were absorbing the very principles she had been grappling with in her own life. After classes, Sarah lingered in the empty classroom, reflecting on her role as a teacher. She was not merely imparting knowledge, but acting as a beacon of hope and growth. It was then that she understood. Every time she confronted her discomfort, whether it was sharing her own vulnerabilities or guiding her students, she fortified her own spirit, working toward the person she aspired to be. Later that evening, as she sat across from Jack at a quaint little cafe, his demeanor felt different, tension palpable, yet somehow hopeful. "Are you ready?" she asked, knowing they were about to navigate uncharted waters. "I think so. I've been thinking about how much my past shapes my present," he replied, his voice low but steady. The gravity of their conversation hung between them, charged, demanding honesty. "Then let's talk," she encouraged, steeling herself for the truths that would not only redefine them, but also bind them closer. Jack hesitated, his fork hovering above his untouched plate, and she realized how daunting it felt to unearth buried pain. She remembered her own struggles to articulate her fears. With a deep breath, he finally spoke. "I was in a really dark place once. I was surrounded by people who didn't care. I lost myself in trying to fit into what they wanted." He glanced away, and Sarah sensed the weight of unspoken pain. As he opened up, sharing moments of chaos and self-doubt, Sarah felt a wave of empathy wash over her. His struggles mirrored her own journey, and under his vulnerability, she found strength. The shadows that had knitted themselves into their bond began to wane, and for the first time, she envisioned a wide-open future that awaited them both. But just as the conversation seemed to bring light, Jack's eyes clouded with a flash of regret. "What if I'm still that person?" he whispered, a tremor in his voice. "What if I can never escape who I was?" His question pierced through the air, casting a shadow over their connection. It was a moment suspended in time, underscoring the fragility of their vulnerability. The fear of being trapped in their past loomed over them, a stark reminder that understanding was only the first step toward transformation. "Then we fight against it," she countered, her conviction sharpening. "We become the people we choose to be, not the ones we were forced to be." But was she truly ready to fight for both of them, to forge a new identity from shared struggles? As she met his gaze, the uncertainty settled in her stomach, intertwining with a fragile hope. In that vulnerable space, their future trembled before them, full of possibility, but replete with the risk of old demons reemerging. Would they choose to emerge stronger together, or would the weight of their pasts ultimately pull them apart? The answers lurked in the tangled threads of their revelations, waiting to be pulled. In the weeks that followed, Sarah stood at the threshold of transformation, the air thick with anticipation and fear. With each passing day, she fortified her resolve, eager to pursue not just her dreams, but a new sense of partnership with Jack. Their late-night discussions lingered like a promise. Shared vulnerabilities bridged the gaps of their pasts, turning darkness into something manageable. The community center thrived under her guidance as the tutoring program expanded. With every new student that walked through the door, a sense of purpose rooted itself deeper within her soul. She was not merely a survivor of circumstances, but a creator of opportunities. Leo's progress inspired her. She reveled in his victories, acknowledging that his growth mirrored her own. Through tutoring, she discovered newfound confidence and a concrete belief in her mission. It was during one heated class that Sarah found herself channeling that very confidence. An impromptu discussion turned into a group project where students shared their own fears and aspirations. The smiles stretched across their faces as they formed plans to confront challenges together, a reflection of her own journey, solidifying the idea that vulnerability could be met with courage. She had not only birthed an educational initiative, she had built a sanctuary for dreams, a true testament to her own once suppressed desires. Meanwhile, Jack's cautious honesty propelled their relationship into precarious territory. The unearthing of his past revealed a man battling with shame and expectations, yet it also introduced an unexpected tender strength. He gradually desisted from efforts to shield her from his history, choosing instead to face it with her at his side. The raw heartbreak in his eyes when he shared the regrets of his former self hardly diminished her belief in their potential. One clear afternoon, Jack invited her for a walk in the park, the sun casting a warm glow that felt inviting and urgent. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he began, his voice steady but layered with gravitas. "And I believe it's time I took action, not just for me, but for us." His words pierced through her anxious fog. Jack was ready to confront the weight of their intertwined lives. This was his moment. "What do you mean?" she prompted, her heart racing. "I want to engage with the community, show them who I am, beyond the whispers. I want to support and uplift, to create a positive image alongside your educational efforts, to contribute, not overshadow." His sincerity rang like a bell against the backdrop of the vibrant park. Here was Jack, transforming a lingering regret into purposeful action. Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. This was not just about his past. It was about the future they could construct together, one fueled by integrity and mutual growth. With unyielding determination, they plotted a community event, a program aimed at fostering learning and resilience. Weekly meetings turned into brainstorming sessions filled with laughter and excitement. Synergy blossomed between them. Every plan they crafted stitched their lives together further, intermingling dreams, aspirations, and realization that they were partners forging a new legacy, one that encouraged open dialogue, growth, and community spirit. The date of the event arrived with a palpable buzz of excitement coursing through Maplewood. Family, friends, and curious community members flocked to the center, where Sarah and Jack stood at the forefront, ready to unveil the culmination of their hard work. As Jack spoke about his journey, his missteps, and the lessons he gleaned, the disbelief that had accompanied his past evaporated. Attendees began to see the vision of growth alongside them, feeling inspired by their authenticity. That evening, as the success of the event unfolded, Sarah watched Jack transform into a figure of resilience rather than whisperings of shame. The lightness shared in the air was tangible. Hope knitted the community closer as they celebrated not just accomplishments, but ideals of compassion and progress. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the evening settled in, Sarah marveled at the journey they had undertaken. The once tumultuous doubts and fears had given way to undeniable empowerment. She was no longer just a single mother fighting for her children's future. She was a recognized leader in her community, catalyzing change not only for her family, but for those around her. Through laughter and shared struggles, Sarah had crafted a nurturing haven for children eager to learn. She had also uncovered and reignited her own dreams. Standing next to Jack, the man who had once seemed a distant star, now felt entwined with her spirit, illuminating the path ahead. "I couldn't have done this without you," Jack said, his voice steady, eyeing the vibrant crowd that had gathered to support them. Her heart swelled with pride. She had conquered barriers within herself and with him. Together, they had found their truest selves amidst vulnerability, shattered expectations, and the courage to embrace their realities. As darkness cloaked the night and stars began to twinkle above, she let out a deep breath. The once weighty, paralyzing fears had dissipated like the tendrils of fog. She was free, and so was Jack. They stood not as shadows of their pasts, but as architects of their future, bright and unblemished. The journey ahead was theirs to create. And in that moment of clarity, a profound realization gripped her. This was not merely about individual achievement. It was about the power of connection, the beauty in shared stories. As she looked out at the community, a sense of purpose rekindled within her. She had built a space where dreams lived, where new beginnings blossomed, and where once faces of doubt became pillars of hope. In a quiet whisper, Sarah understood that she had not only transformed her life, she had uncovered her potential to inspire others to do the same.
The boldness of her actions would now echo far beyond the confines of her own narrative. The charged energy sparked connections that would continue to create ripples. With newfound confidence, she smiled, knowing that extraordinary things awaited just around the corner. Letting the past define her had never been the plan. No more whispers, no more shadows, only the light of endless possibilities. And with that, she made a promise to herself and to Jack. Never again would they shy away from the truths that molded them, nor would they waver under the weight of judgment. They were meant to blaze trails together, empowered by their history, driven by their determination, and fueled by love. Standards would only be set by their growing ambition, and this awareness sparkled brightly in the air around them, just like their dreams, now fully realized. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep receiving compelling narratives that inspire and uplift, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let others experience these journeys. Comment below to share your reactions and theories about the story's resolution. Don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to witness this beautiful conclusion. Your support matters, and we can only grow together.